Oh, come on. There we go. Live, alive. Oh. So, why am I showing you this again? South African electoral results by ethnic bloc. Well, here's a disaggregated. You can see all of the mess. IFPs sort of decline from 94 till 2014 and then sort of gradual jagged recovery. EFF popping up there. ANC plotted on the other side of the graph because they're so massive they dwarf everyone. Why am I showing you this again? The ANC had a flat rate in the mid-60s. The DA and other minoritarian parties like the old NP, the Vryheids van Plus and so on, bobbing around in the mid-20s, something around mid to low 20s. Why am I showing you this? This is a video about Rob Hersov, isn't it? Why am I showing you this graph? It's because I've had one interaction with the man, one, and it was because of this graph. So I had he put together this thing, Truth Report, and I've had for nearly 2 years now. I've been running this sort of hinky little shoestring operation called the Cape Independent. And it's been doing okay. I mean, look, okay, this year has been a catastrophe for me running the site because we've had a lot of extremely stupid problems, which I will go into another time. They don't really matter. We're back. And I'm gradually trying to get back into the flow that I was in beforehand. But it's, it dulls the enthusiasm a little bit when you have screw-ups of the kind that I've had. We were off the net for 2 months, lawsuits, crazy stuff. But I'd managed to get on Rob Hersov's radar somehow. And he had me and a whole bunch of other creators and people invited to a WhatsApp group where we were going to discuss forming a new sort of media company. I was just sort of like on autopilot. I was like, okay, well, he wants to chat. I don't think, at the time I was thinking, this guy, there's something off about him. I can't make sense of his political decisions. All of them seem really stupid because he's backing, like as a solution to South Africa, he was backing like Musi Maimane, like after he left the DA even, right? And he's backing Gate McKenzie, who's a crook. And he's backing Songezo Zibi, who's Songezo Zibi. So what's going on with Rob Hersov? Why is he doing this? So he forms this thing called, Truth Report. Oh, G&T out of a beer mug with more lemon you can shake a stick at. It's good. So I puzzled over this for a while, and I got chatting with a friend of mine earlier today. And I just decided, actually, it might be worth looking into properly. So I did sort of the basic amount of research one can do if you don't have a huge amount of, fancy contacts, which I don't. And the fancy contacts I do have, I don't want to abuse because I don't know them all that well. So I just Googled Rob Hersov and went back as far as Google would take me. And I had a look at what he was up to. And I mean, there's all the usual stuff like, okay, well, his father was brought into, what's the technical term for that? Let me look it up because I've got notes. Where's my notes gone? So, I mean, look, his grandfather founded Anglo-Vol. His father was a big political player. He was a member of something called the Pinay Circle. The Pinay Circle was founded by the Habsburg dynasty after they were deposed in the World Wars. And they're sort of like a, right-wing reactionary elite, slightly rebellious, so on and so forth. And, it's normal for people to get all sort of conspiracy theory-ish about these things, right? But I thought, okay, well, if that group is interested in us, because you remember, like Anton Rupert was a member of the Pinay Circle, Robert Hersov Sr. was member of the Pinay Circle, and Rob Hersov worked for Johan Rupert, son of Anton Rupert. And so there's like this tight little network. And I sort of thought, well, look, if the guys who were defeated in the world wars, and okay, yes, they backed apartheid. Basil Hersov was part of an advisory panel in Botha's government, involved in arms dealing, all kinds of stuff like that. I go, okay, fine. Like there's lots of dirty games played at an elite level, but I sort of thought, well, look, if they're a bit reactionary, then maybe there's a chance that they will sort of lean into ideas like Cape independence. Who knows? Maybe they have a sense of adventure and vigor and creativity and break stuff and move forward. And he looks like a nonsense character, as someone's commenting, but I don't think he is. I think he's a sort of junior member of an elite cluster that has been governing South Africa for 100 years. Rothschild, Oppenheimer, and then there's and then sort of in the mid-century they welcome in a bunch of Afrikaners to participate, and then in the modern age they welcome in a bunch of black elites to participate through the Brenthurst Initiative, which drafted the Black Economic Empowerment Laws. And so you get these little layers, right? No, I'm trying to think, why Truth Report? Now, I still don't have a very firm answer to that, but I think from looking into it that I've answered a few questions that have been nagging at me. See, I've been trying to figure out exactly what the deal was with Ramaphosa and, him taking over the ANC and so on. And I dug back and I found this video from here we go. Let me present the screen. Because I've got this video up somewhere. No, that's the Helen Zille one. I'm gonna do another shorter stream late after this, just playing 3 short clips of Helen Zille to explain her worldview, which is going to be fun because it's very short and I don't have to think about it too much. But so okay, this is the wrong one. This one actually didn't turn out to be quite as interesting as all that. Hold on. So there's this old interview he was having in early 2015 in Ghana, and there was this sort of French-led in this sort of, one of those fancy sort of corporate globalist investment type vibes, and here we go. It should be. Wait, why? Here's the thing: when you open up this video, in conversation with, there we go, gotcha. So it's this one.
You have actually 5 predictions for Africa, Rob. As an investor, you have predictions. So which are they?
This is interesting.
I have 4 predictions and 1 recommendation. So my prediction number 1 is that Zimbabwe will be bankrupt in 6 to 12 months. I think as a country, it's finished. It's lost its moral compass. Its economic policies are crazy, and they've run out of any excuses. So Zimbabwe, goodbye. Financially, kaput. I think Angola, maybe in the next 5 years, will overtake Nigeria as Africa's #1 oil economy. I think the ANC will split in half in the next 4 years. I think Zuma is not the right leader for many reasons for South Africa, and that my country I'm very disappointed in. I'm not in favor of investing.
Right. He said the ANC will split in half. What? In 2015, he's saying this. Very early 2015. No, I mean, he doesn't know about Jacob Zuma or anything. But here's the thing. I heard a rumor because I called up a friend of mine who's got I don't know, he's got some old contacts, right? He's worked in finance, and he's a bit conspiratorial, and he sort of he said to me that Rob Hersov was involved in funding the EFF, and I thought, oh, that sounds crazy. There's no way. There's no fucking way. And he says he can't prove it. It's just sort of something that's a rumor that everyone sort of regards as true. I thought, okay, the guy's not. The guy knows a lot of inside stuff, right? So he kind of said to me this, and I thought, well, hang on, can't be true. Can't be. Fucking can't be. Absolutely fucking can't be. And then, now, I found this. I went back and I just went to Twitter and I said, search Rob Hersov, sort by latest, and I scrolled until I reached the bottom of the pile. Now, there's no more interesting content once you get earlier than about 2013, because that's when he starts Invest Africa. Interesting year to start this stuff. But I want to show you this because this is just so good. This is so interesting. Do you see this? Ladies and gentlemen, let me make it bigger. Here. Now, you may recognize this gentleman here. And this tubby gentleman who's a little bit leaner today is Julius Malema. There's Floyd Shivambu, and there's Dali Mpofu. This gentleman over here is Robin Renwick, British ambassador who handled the handover of power in South Africa in 1994. He's a major negotiating figure. I don't know who this fellow is, but I know who that is. That's Clem Sunter. Clem Sunter was he's retired now, but he was Oppenheimer's point man for like analysis and so on. He was a sort of socialist type, sort of very weird sort of corporate socialism. If you can identify the other people in the room, I'd be really, really interested. But yeah, so he meets them there. Now, again, you see Robin Renwick and him. There's a photograph where someone presents it as being part of Chatham House. This wasn't Chatham House. This is not a Chatham House meeting. That photo that you often see with them together is not Chatham House. If it happened at Chatham House, it would be, oh, okay, well, the transatlantic elite want to have a look at what's going on in South Africa. That is not what this is. This is a group of South African elites. South African elites bringing and inviting the EFF in. Why? What the hell does the Hersov dynasty and the Oppenheimer dynasty and Robin Renwick have to do in the same room with Julius Malema? The answer comes to me because of a stream that I haven't. I figured if I try to find it now, it would take a bit too long. But let me just describe it to you. In March 2022, there was a. And actually, you know what? Let me keep sharing the screen from Twitter because I'm going to find something on my profile. In March 2022, there was a talk that Helen Zille did for BizNews. Oh, beg your pardon. And what she did is she had this whole presentation where she had this big triangle. And on the one side is EFF, and on the other side is like DA and like other little parties. And in the middle is a big chunk of things called the ANC. And you say, we're going to take the sensible ANC, and we're going to get those people to, we're going to divide those people. Because now we have a comparison of visions. Whereas before we only had patronage. Now, I'm not someone who's naive like that. I don't think Zille is that naive either. But I think everything is patronage, even things based on ideas. So the reason that I'm bringing up Rob Hersov is not because I think that he's a big string puller. I think he's a good networker. He's really, really good at bringing people together. He's a pretty decent businessman by all accounts. Yeah, so where are we now? Why is that not working? Okay, right. So what I'm saying is, it's more that he's indicative of where this group is going, because he's the loudest speaking member. So if someone is making a lot of noise and they're sort of an insider, you can see kind of what's going on. I don't think he's the main decision maker. I think he's just part of a certain cluster of people who have shared interests. And I think this includes Johan Rupert, and I think it includes the Oppenheimer family, although I think they're increasingly being hands-off with South Africa and diversifying more into the rest of the continent. And, you know, they're kind of done with the whole Brain Trust Foundation now. But they divested from the mining interest in South Africa in 2012, you know. So it was interesting timing. I think 2012, you get a big pivot because you get Marikana. Nelson Mandela enters the terminal phase of his life. No one sees him in public again. 2013, he's dead. Julius Malema's kicked out of the party. 2014, he forms the EFF. Immediately, you have the situation where Rob Hersov comes out of like this apolitical vacuum that he's been living in. He left the country in 1985. He hates South Africa. He thinks it's a load of bollocks. The only parts that are worth anything to him are the bits he can stick money in and the bits where it's nice to have a holiday. He doesn't really like South Africa, or he would have come back sooner. But he has a job to do. And it's nice to be able to wield power, and anyone will show up to do that. So he hasn't got a very sort of exceptional life for someone of his position. He was born into an extremely wealthy family of mining magnates, ends up in Morgan Stanley? I think it's Morgan Stanley. And then when he gets out, he works directly under Rupert Murdoch for a bit. And then he starts doing his own businesses, some of which fail, some of which succeed. Even the ones that fail are still impressive in their own right. So I don't want to say that he's a bad businessman or that he's a failure or anything like that. I think he's actually fairly competent, you know? But what I'm seeing over here is that there's this, and here's the thing. There's so many things that changed around 2013. There's the balance between white and black in ownership, in wealth and home ownership and stock ownership in South Africa tips 50-50 in that year. But the economy also goes sideways, and not much more redistribution or demographic sort of power balance shifts then. It takes until the last couple of years you actually see it find a new step to change. And that's because Ramaphosa has been sort of ratcheting up a bunch of things. So, yeah, what happens in this weird little window is you get Mandela dying, EFF reforming, some trade balance shifts, economy is plateaued. Jacob Zuma is being more and more extravagant in the ways of using state power. and he has cut out the Rothschilds, who have had a direct plug-in to the South African state since they funded its creation. So you've got to remember the Round Table Group, which is Lord Milner and what's his name, Cecil Rhodes, and they're sort of lackeys and the little people they train to write in the newspapers and advocate in Parliament and so on. The Round Table Group, it also later becomes Chatham House. So just bear that in mind. This is funded by Lord Nathan Rothschild and Lord Rosebery, and they use it to foment for a confederacy of Southern Africa, which eventually expands to a Johan Vihan. I will address this thing that Rob Hersov is against Cape Independence. It'll make sense in context. What's strange is not that he's against it. What's strange is that he was temporarily for it for like a couple of months. It was a couple of months where he's actually saying like, this is a good idea. And I can't figure out, that is something I actually cannot figure out. I cannot figure out why he entertained it for even a little bit, because the long-term goal here, I think it may have been because there was probably a window in which they couldn't get Ramaphosa on side for the coalition. But what I'm saying is that they started planning this. They developed this investment vehicle for Africa at a time when everyone was telling them, okay, well, and they would agree if you ask them, South Africa is no place to invest. And he says it in that interview that I said. He says, don't invest in South Africa. And at the same time, he's got this thing that says investing in South Africa. What is going on here? Well, it's that you use it to accumulate capital to affect things and push things around. And you can use it for networking, and you can use it. You can still make money. It's not just, nefarious conspiracies or anything like that. But he needed to be in South Africa to save this project. Now, what is he doing? He's grabbed a bunch of people who are kind of right-leaning liberals and sort of Trumpian liberal conservative-y sort of people in South Africa, and a lot of them are my friends, people I like, so I don't want to be too hard on them for joining on his bandwagon. I understand why they're doing it. But what I understand this project is containment. Now, containment means you draw in people who would otherwise be opposed to what you want to do in order to drain their power and prevent them from implementing something that would be truly disruptive. So, Rob Hersov, sort of, what is he pitching exactly? He says he wants, most of it's just attacking the ANC. Okay, fine, the ANC sucks. So what? What do we gain? Is there anybody who doesn't see the ANC as sucking, who is willing to listen to someone telling the ANC sucks? Even people who vote for the ANC know they suck. That's not why they're doing it. What we have here, and the reason I brought up this tweet here, is the coalition. Now, I've said this multiple times. The coalition has been planned beforehand, and the moment I knew it was in March 2022. That was because Helen Zille brought up a little triangle speech. We're going to fight over the ANC. We're going to split them in half. We're going to do this, and this. Right? Now, she didn't say the word coalition, and right up until 1 week before the election, she took the Sunday World. I think it was 6 days before the election. She took the Sunday World to the press ombudsman to say, you are out of line for suggesting we're even thinking about a coalition. 6 days before the election. Now, I called it in March 2022 because I had a chat with Helen Zille in February of that year. I'm naturally a sort of open-minded kind of guy, and I always think, well, why don't we just try and we see how, whether someone's willing to listen. So I tried Helen Zille. I spoke to her, and she was really nice, and she took me to her house, and we had a lovely brunch, sort of, very typical sort of, Jewish brunch, which is, like lots of cream cheese on bagels with salmon. Lovely, actually. And what happened was there's this brief conversation where she said, what do you want out of this meeting? And I sort of, she wanted to introduce me to Gwen and Gwenya and all of these other people. And Gwen and Gwenya sort of I think at that point actually kind of knew who I was, at least peripherally, like, oh, it's that twat from who has his stupid blog, that kind of vibe. And so even though Helen Zille shared her number with me, she didn't want to talk to me about anything. I think also working for AfriForum didn't help. And she was what Zille sort of seemed to be suggesting in context is that I come and work for the DA in some capacity, which somehow that just didn't click. Like it was obvious within within a couple of hours after the meeting. I was like, oh, that's what she wanted, but it just didn't register at the time. And instead, what I said is, well, no, what I want to do is convince you that I know that there's a possibility of going into coalition with the ANC because, they're projected to drop below 50% and, the options there. And, everyone can see it. So I'm just hoping that you don't do that and instead you back Cape independence because long term, that's the only thing that's going to fix it, sort of give us some guarantees. So, and she said, no, don't worry about it. We would only do that if they were going to guarantee that they're going to abolish race-based legislation, privatize the state-owned enterprises, and what was the other thing that she said? Institute an independent commission that was above the reach of the president to investigate corruption anywhere, which sounds like a recipe for bloody catastrophe, because you imagine this body can just harass and interfere with and force people out of office anytime it wants to. It would be sort of like a softer equivalent of the Committee for Public Safety from the First French Republic. It would be bananas. But yeah, no, they tried to institute that. They've got an amendment bill to the Constitution and everything. But the thing is, they got none of this. They haven't gotten anything out of it so far. They're starting to show spine now that they've gotten rid of what's that advisor's name? The one who keeps failing upwards, Ryan Coetzee, because he botched the Liberal Democrats campaign and the Brexit, the anti-Brexit campaign, and he botched the consulting group known as Consulum as well. So he botched pretty much every major project he's done, but he just keeps getting given new important projects somehow. But what happened around the same time is you got this guy on on Twitter called Gulam. Now, Gulam, I don't really care who it is. I had a few people arguing with me in the comments, and now unfortunately I sort of know that it's an Indian guy who's kind of somehow got some connection to Ramaphosa. I don't know. I don't think who he is as an individual matters. The point is that for years and years and years, he's been like this really rabid sort of pro-ANC account on Twitter. And he's specifically a Ramaphosa faction account. Like, he doesn't do Zuma. Zuma's a crook, blah, blah, blah. Now, what happened was I tried to figure out, because I was confused for a while, because I thought they were a DA propaganda channel, because they say so many nice things about the DA. But then I sort of looked back, and at one stage they weren't. This guy was calling Helen Zille like an evil racist colonialist, blah, 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 blah. And then one day, just sometime in early 2022, the criticisms just go, whew. And then in May, it's all of a sudden, hero, savior of South Africa, Helen Zille, greatest person ever. DA is wonderful, actually. What? And it's around the same time as Helen Zille did this little triangle speech. So there's a point where the ANC, the upper echelons of both the ANC and the DA come to an agreement, and they go, okay, we're set, we've got all the pieces in place. Okay. So now we know that the coalition's in place. And I sort of thought, well, okay, cool. So we've got some people who definitely wanted Ramaphosa in charge of the ANC as well. So we had we had this big contest. We had this big fucking contest in for his election in 2017, and billions were pumped into the ANC. Obviously, bribe money. I mean, how else is Ramaphosa with no ethnic base going to get all of this? Come on. And I really want to find this paper because I'm just trying. I just remembered it now. So there's Institute of Security Studies. I just want to show you this graph. They did this whole thing on targeted assassinations, political killings. Was it them? Or was it the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime? No, it was from like 2018 or something like that. This is very frustrating. Might have been Enact. I'm gonna have a look while I'm talking to you. I'm gonna have a poke around and see if I can find it. But the basic thrust of it was that there's this graph where found you little devil. It was from Enact, not the ISS. You little beauty. You see this thing? You know what that big spike is? Now, you can see, okay, well, the orange is the taxis, and the yellow is the political, and the green is the organized crime, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? Okay, cool. But you know that the taxis are all like tied to various parts of taxis and the trucking cartels. All of these cartels are tied to various branches of the ANC. So this is where a lot of the fights go down. We know also that we had a fairly sort of decent spike of political killings around this time as well. But guess who was contesting that province on behalf of Ramaphosa's faction in 2016? Senzo Mchunu, the guy who is being picked on for running fucking death squads by General Mkhwanazi. Okay, so we have a cluster of elite of a recognizable sort of social footprint are involved in backing Ramaphosa to win this sort of contest. And this contest means death squads. Do you get where I'm coming from? And not only that, it gets worse. So the consequences of this game that they're playing, where they're splitting the ANC and backing a moderate who they can push into a coalition with the DA, because they know, because of that graph I showed you right up front, right, where ANC and their splinter parties have static 60 to 65% dominance. DA has static 20 to 25% dominance share of the vote, right? It's not going to change. Minority is going to minority, majority is going to majority, right? So you have to break the ANC. How do they break the ANC? Well, there's that London Investment Conference where you've got the representative of the Oppenheimer family, the representative of the Hersov dynasty as well, Anglo-Val, whatever, blah blah blah. So they put their money into the EFF. Now there was a long rumor that Natie Kirsch was sticking his money into the EFF. I haven't been able to confirm that. I honestly can't even confirm that Rob Hersov has put his money in there. I ought to emphasize this as a conjecture based on circumstance, and that you should take this with a grain of salt, obviously, and for legal purposes. But what I'm saying here is that this guy, and by the way, did you know Rob Hersov is on that list of people who flew the Lolita Express? I think. Am I mistaken? I might be mistaken. worth checking. But the thing for me is that this little game that Helen Zille sort of sketched out, because when she said this, had this triangle speech, she said another thing. And this was that she had seen this since 2014. 2014. Oh, okay. Well, the EFF show up on stage, and she immediately knows that this means the game is on to split the ANC and get into coalition with them. From then, that's the game they decided on then? Either Helen Zille is really short-sighted, or everyone has a lot of people who are used to playing these games in multiple countries, right, were sharing perspectives on the matter. And it seems to me that the conclusion was reached that this is how you solve a problem like South Africa. Why did they need to solve this problem? Well, the problem wasn't that South Africa was doing badly. Obviously, that is a problem. It's not the problem. The problem is return on investment. The problem is access to government contracts. Why do you think they push purchasing power parity? Public-private partnerships, a different PPP. Why do you think they push public-private partnerships? It's because they're fucking lucrative, that's why. Johan Rupert is so. I mean, look at the Cape now. They've got this electrical wheeling deal that they've done with Rob Hersov, where he basically sends a bunch of techie dweebs to set up a service where people can sell their electricity back into the market. Nice, okay. From their solar panels and their inverters and what have you. But in order to get this done, the DA first makes sure that they put a whole bunch of legislative barriers in place so that anyone who buys a solar panel has to pay a nasty little fine and has to hook themselves up to the grid and has to follow certain criteria, making sure that they are ready to sell into Rupert's central design, of which he is the only contractor. Very nice. Then, of course, you've got his special deal with Vodacom, where they're going to set up a vertical. So, you know how you set up a monopoly, right? You buy every layer of the distribution and production network of a good. And with each layer, you can shut out people preferentially who are your competitors at a different layer, right? Or a layer that's closer to the consumer. So what he's done is that the Competition Commission stood on a whole thing where, Johan Rupert was buying up this. There's this company called Massive, where what he's doing is so he's got they sorted all of their sort of mobile data, mobile internet stuff into Vodacom, and then they took all of Vodacom's fiber stuff into Massive. And Massive includes like Vumatel and all of those other guys. And they produce shit service. Like their ratings are worse than Telkom for most of those companies. Like they're absolute shite, right? They're dog shit. But they have a big slice of the market at each layer. And you've got your ISP, you got your fiber, you got your blah, 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 blah. Right? And so now what you got to do, because look, fiber's run its course, right? All of the easy pickings have done. Everyone's laid out to all of the wealthy neighborhoods and everything. 80% of every neighborhood in the country has only one option for fiber, and only 20% of people actually switch at any point as customers. So there's no value in laying out your fiber where there's another guy already. So those kind of neighborhood. So basically, the whole market's stagnant for fiber internet, which is why you're getting no quality. You're actually better off signing up to OpenServe, which is Telkom, the government service, and then getting your ISP to be, and I know this guy is my friend and everything, but genuinely he is the highest rated ISP in the country, is Atomic Access, that's owned by Joe Botha. Do Telkom fiber and then do like that would be your best option is like telecom fiber and then atomic access as an ISP. That's your best combo. But for everyone else, they can do as awful a job as they want because there's no competition. So where do you make money? Some CEOs have been doing this thing where like, oh, like check me out. Like, because the CEO can like push stock by looking busy and then bail once he's got his bonus, and then the shareholders are left with holding the bag. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now, because they're going, okay, let's dump a bunch of money into township fiber. And then you're like, no, it's not going to work. People use pay-as-you-go data. They're not interested in your like weird fiber projects and laying that fiber out in those areas to bridge the digital divide. There's no point in it, but it makes you look busy and you can promise that they are future customers, right? What Rupert realizes this is a load of bollocks. It's better to actually merge mobile data and fiber, and then you can have the whole pie. And at every layer, you can sort of say, well, oh no, like our ISP doesn't actually have to pay for services. All of you get higher and higher services, and then all of the areas where he's got fiber, there are no other ISPs. Eventually, this is sort of like what would happen once you get preferential treatment, right? And then you can use that leverage to sort of because you've now got a cost advantage because you're gaining revenue from two different levels. You can now use that. You can use that market advantage to sort of buy out your competitors' infrastructure over time, or even their shares, right? Whichever looks more sort of decent, and you can build a monopoly that way, and you just squeeze and squeeze. This is how Standard Oil got done. They made sure to have a vertical monopoly in every level of oil distribution, manufacturing, and everything, right? So he's got the setup, and the Competition Commission says, "Whoa, not allowed to do that. That's bad. That looks like a monopoly in formation." Then the ANC and the DA lean on the Competition Commission, and they threaten to disband the entire organization. They don't let Mr. Rupert through with his beautiful and heartfelt passion project. And so they shuffle a few little share numbers down. Like, oh no, instead of 40%, it's going to be like 36.4% or whatever the hell it is. That's not how good this is. And I'll tell you what, this is normal. Why do you think Rupert was invited along to the White House to go and lie to the public about how safe South Africa is? Look at me. I sleep with my windows and doors open. You want another good one from in that vein? I watched an interview today with Rob Hersov from a few fucking years ago, and he said, I don't own any possessions. I don't own much. We're not very materialistic people. We don't even own an apartment, me and my wife. And you only ever see me in like one change of clothing because, we're very, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Works fantastically if you are oozing money from every pore, because then what does anything matter? What does it matter? It's a fungible commodity. You could have held a family house for 300 years. If you've got £5 billion or whatever the hell it is, you can look at that little farmhouse and let's say, imagine that I bought this. If I'd grown up in this house instead of my cousins, my dad grew up in this thing here. He grew up there. My dad grew up on this farm. And imagine that he took over the farm instead of his cousin. Just, arbitrary. It would never happen, but let's imagine it does. And then I become this multi-billionaire, and I look at this sort of quaint 18th century farmhouse, and I think to myself, yeah, but Lake Como's nicer. Why? Why do I bother? Why am I letting any of this stop me? And it's that kind of frivolous attitude where there's no attachment. The guy left South Africa in 1985, right? He came back in 2017 once Cyril Ramaphosa was like in, right? So he'll fly up and down for his investments. By the way, side note, he mentioned Zimbabwe. he'd been pushing for investment in Zimbabwe and taking like fancy shots with Mnangagwa, you know. So that funny little coup that happened towards the end of Mugabe's life, I mean, the man was leaning on an open door. I mean, Zimbabwe was broke, and they needed absolutely petty amounts of cash to make sure that the spice kept flowing. And it's a place where you can do a lot of black market deals because there's absolutely no controls, no rule of law, nothing. Right? So the old gang is back, baby. It's taken a long route. Here's the thing, though. So now I'm going to get back to Truth Report in a second and say, why is Truth Report a thing? Right? Now, I have a couple of theories. I don't really know. But look at this. What did Zuma do? He replaced this permanent cartel that's been in charge of South Africa since before it existed with a couple of Indians. Like, not even Brahmins, but like those kind of Indians. You understand? Can't let them in. Whoa, never. Selling things out of your car boot. And so these guys, the Guptas, come up, and of course they're garish and they're corrupt or whatever. Ha 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 ha. Yes. But who's been the biggest recipient of BEE contracts? Who's been the biggest beneficiaries of that? Business for South Africa. Martin Kingston. The front man for Rothschild Capital. That's who's been in since Ramaphosa got back in the driving seat. Now, the thing is, I can't imagine Rob Hersov and Helen Zille getting on. I couldn't imagine the two liking each other. They don't seem like the type. And besides, Helen Zille is a bit idealistic. Rob Hersov doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't believe in anything except that's mine, and don't bother me, don't interrupt me while I'm having fun. Which, there's an admirable quality to that. I can respect it. And here's the thing. I'm not against the idea of an elite. I'm not an egalitarian. My point is that the elite is supposed to be loyal. But there is no loyalty there. I don't see any loyalty. The kind of thing that Johan Rupert said in the White House, that's unforgivable. That little game that he played there, that's truly unforgivable. It's not just that. It's that he deliberately twisted the knife. There's no way that someone as intelligent as Johan Rupert would make a remark about I sleep with my windows and doors open in my gigantic fortified mansion with my private army. You think he doesn't understand how that comes across to certain people? I think he thinks it's funny. It reminds me of these games that they're playing where let's start a civil war in the ANC, and you get a couple hundred people dying in KZN, and you've got the head of the death squads from the 2016 election heading the police department, right? And you got Julius Malema. Now, you remember there was that carte blanche special a while ago? A couple of years ago, I think it was 2018, 2019, somewhere around there, where they covered a guy who's in prison who had been hired and equipped and staffed directly by Julius Malema himself, right, to go and do farm murders. And then when the episode was aired, the producer was murdered. You sit here and you think, okay, well, look, here's my thing. Here's where I sort of get a bit sort of funny and itchy under the collar. I understand that these people don't have any kind of principles. For them, this is a game. For them, this is all a game. It's just stupid, petty nonsense. For me, this is a place I grew up. This is where I felt the most intense moments of happiness. This is where I've had almost every person that I've ever loved has been, and a lot of people I've hated as well, which is also fun in its own way. And I can't be a ruthless like a rootless cosmopolitan like these people. I can't. It's not in me. I'm too low down on the food chain. I'm too attached to the soil. You know? My son is the 5th generation to grow up in this house. My father was, I believe, the 12th, or was it 13th generation to live in that house. I'm not going anywhere, you know, and I can't stand people who treat this kind of thing lightly, this attachment lightly. You can always start again somewhere else, you know. That's the idea. And I think you know, for all her faults, at least Helen Zille does have a human streak, you know. She does. There's something that she gives a shit about. It happens to be wrong. It happens to be perverse, but it is something that she does care about. And you know what? I'm going to share that with you because it'll make sense. Now, before I say this, I want to say something. The DA has been around since 1896. That sounds like an insane thing to say because you're thinking, oh, they were formed in the year 2000. According to Helen Zille, they were formed in 1977 as the Progressive Party. But this was they were a splinter group of the United Party, which was formed out of the ashes of the South African Party, which was founded in the Cape by William Schreiner in 1896. Now, what's really weird is that a party called the South African Party that ended up governing on behalf of the British for half a century claimed to have been claimed to the public. And now there's no way of me proving otherwise because, hell, who keeps documents that far back of any kind of shady shit? But they claimed that they were in opposition to Cecil Rhodes. I suspect it was controlled opposition, but there's not enough detail at that time back then to really demonstrate. Yeah, so the DA have been around a really, really long time. And they've had a certain philosophy in place for a really, really long time. Progressives, they have this idea. If you've read Jan Smuts's book, Holism and Evolution, it was written in 1926. Now, you remember he joined the Roundtable Group right after the Boer War was over. He wrote the Constitution of the Union of South Africa single-handedly, which lasted from 1910 until 1961 when we became a republic. He was in and out of almost every government. He designed the entire Constitution of the League of Nations and a good portion of the architecture of the United Nations. Why am I telling you this? Because he wrote this book and he was the leading figure in this party until his death. He dominated it. There was no one who could compete with him. And his theory is based on Cliveden said, no, that's a deep cut right there. But let me stick to my point. What Jan Smuts was arguing in Holism and Evolution, if you actually read the whole thing, is that his conclusion is that all matter and life in the universe has one single goal: to achieve common purpose under the League of Nations. He refers to the League of Nations because that's what there was, but the idea of a single governing community that spans the entire planet and centrally controls all matter and life. This is the end. This is the end goal. It is not unique. There are a lot of people who think like this at the time. He's just channeling the zeitgeist. What does Helen Zille say? I'm going to put three things together. Whoops. That's my own video. So I'm going to put there are three little video clips I'm going to play to you. Now, I know Helen Zille is not Rob Hersov, but there's a cluster of these people who they meet regularly. I think they call it like the Friday brunch or the Friday lunch or whatever it is. And it's Helen Zille and Tony Leon and the Oppenheimers, like Mary Slack Oppenheimer and a couple of other people. I know Rob Hersov attends a bunch of them, right? And this little cluster of people, enormously influential. They've been around for a long time. And I mean, it's Johan Rupert and Becker and all of these big shots, you know, whether they made their money under the empire, whether they were Afrikaners who made their way up in the 60s and 70s. But these family dynasties, Patrice Motsepe, I would imagine shows up as well. I don't know. There's a limited amount of information I have from down on the ground. I'm not involved. I'm just an ordinary schmuck who reads stuff and combines it with rumors. But here we go. Let me see if I can share the screen here. Yeah, let's go with this.
Better in Afrikaans, but I'll say it in English. And we have a very strict merit selection for our councillors. Not that we always get it right, but we've also got accountability systems. Remember I said we've got systems and processes in the DA. We're not perfect. We're fallible human beings. And Anfia Grobler put her hat in the ring to stand in a 100% black ward in Mpumalanga. And the selection, the sifting committee, the screening committee sat, she got through that. The selection panel sat, not only did she get through that with all the really tough questions and assignments on the ward and everything that she had to do, she came top. And because we're a non-racial party, she was our candidate. And she won that ward, 100% black South Africans. Now, that's big.
I just want to say here, she's saying we can be a non-racial society where people are capable of trusting each other across color lines. That much I go, well, that's actually quite nice. That's a reassuring thought. And then she says something where I'm going to let you hear this just with the pause because it's let me see if I'm just going to make sure that I've got the right spot here.
Reggie Kanile is our candidate in, I think, an almost 100% white ward. It's not entirely 100% white ward, but nearly. Now, there's no 100% white anything anymore. There are 100% black places, but not 100% white places, which is a good thing. And long may it be like that and increase like that. Because
ooh. Okay. Next video.
it's a story of a country trying to become a successful democracy. And you can't believe how rare that is in the world. Far more countries fail than succeed in making a transition to democracy. Far, far, far more. And in a sense, prosperous constitutional democracies under the rule of law, not the rule of man, with open market economies, with freedom, all the freedoms that we can't anymore quite take for granted, such as freedom of speech, the most fundamental freedom. Those are fought for and struggled over centuries. I mean, it's 800 years since the Magna Carta in America. I mean, in Britain. We are trying to shortcut history. We're trying to get there in 3 decades, 4 decades, which has never been done anywhere in the world, and let alone in a country as plural as ours is. And I see it as such an important thing because the rest of the world is going to have to do exactly the same thing.
The rest of the
Boundaries
world.
and borders mean less and less. The national state over time is going to become obsolete. It's going to take a long time. But people are going to live in plural, complex societies with huge cultural differences, religious differences, and other things. And we have to be able to live together in a context where there's an overarching set of rules, like a constitution, that guarantees everybody's freedoms and everybody's rights, and describes the role of the government, and makes sure that people can live lives they value in difficult and complex circumstances. That is rare, rare, rare. And trying to achieve that in South Africa is a huge prize, and I think we can get it right. And that's been my motivating force my whole life. And that was the story I wanted to write, and also the story about how my family...
Blah, blah, blah. Next one. This one will put everything together for you, really. Because here...
If, hypothetically, I make a claim that within 10 years, there is a classically liberal pro-black party. So assuming the ANC from, say, 94, before the cadre deployment and all that nonsense, but assuming there is a classically liberal black party, do you think the DA would be under immense pressure to compete with a party such as that?
Well, first of all, it's a complete myth to think that the ANC pre-1994 was highly liberal. I happen to be very involved in many organizations that were by and large, not entirely, but by and large, fronts for the ANC internally in South Africa. And I didn't notice any particular specific liberal leanings to any extent. What was important was the commitment to non-racialism, and that was really, really good. And the commitment to many other things, also reconciliation, I thought was very good. But I think there will be a majority black liberal party in South Africa.
Yes.
And I also think that people might not use the term liberal at every occasion when discussing that party. But I think the more we govern, the more the DA will become the catalyst for that party, and in fact will be the center of that party. So if, for example, you had a contest between A and B, I don't want to mention any names specifically.
They're thinking beyond the survival of their little clique. Because you have to understand Zille and Leon and Kutsia and Mania and all of those people have been in charge of the ANC since the 90s. You know, Nick Cleland, who wrote that little book about, if the Cape goes independent, then it'll be like super clean and the economy will be growing really hugely and it'll only be people who are from the Cape originally, but it'll really suck because there won't be a majority black population and it's going to be like a bit like draconian, and you won't be able to do communist stuff or do drugs in public or murder people or have like a fun little democratic like all of this bollocks where the exchange is being safe at night, having a future, and being around people who are your own community for the past fucking half millennium. Okay, yeah, that, or live in a carnivorous shithole, but it's a democracy. That's that. I mean, fucking Nick Cleland. I'm going to read that book because I swear to God, it's quite likely the strongest argument for Cape independence that's ever been written. Extraordinary. It's like, oh, do you want to live in El Salvador? Oh, yeah, no. Fucking mental. Anyway, my point is, I really hope she gets to the point soon, because
It's in the ANC for the presidency of the country.
fuck's sake.
It is highly likely,
That's the wrong
depending on
moment.
which way the ANC splits, that coalitions and options for different coalitions are going to become very, very interesting.
Okay, so there we go. Okay, well, that's an interesting point, but that's not the one I wanted to show you. So she's talking about the ANC splitting. Like, this is 2017. She is not the leader of the party. She hasn't made her comeback. She's still suffering from James Self kicking her out. James Self is dead, and every member of his coalition that was in charge of the party under Musa Maimane has been purged. Helen Zille made the most comprehensive comeback and governs, and she just gets to say whatever she wants and do whatever she wants within the party. She has controlled candidate selection down to the local ward in Cape Town, in the Western Cape in many cases. Absolute deep reach, total spectrum dominance. The woman won back. But what I was trying to find in this, which I know this episode, is there's a bit where she talks about the free market and how she's not for it.
Now, I am a liberal in the sense of really believing in the sanctity of the individual, but I'm not a liberal in many other ways. I believe that the state has a critical role to play in the economy, but more and more liberals are accepting that. I know you don't, but I do believe it. And I can see how well it works when I go to certain places. And it goes with incredible efficiency and no corruption and no self-enrichment. Because the state's job is to join all the dots. Which economic sectors are showing signs of really serious growth? Have we got the right pipeline of skills? If not, where do we get to the right pipeline of skills? How can we then match what people are learning at tertiary institutions with the skills that are needed?
Do you understand what you've just heard in those three pieces of information? Demographic change is vitally necessary in order to produce a world that is pluralistic and no ethnic group can find self-expression politically, so that we can have a world in which we have a harmonized global system of permanent, universal, interpenetrating central planning doctrines. Okay, well, how did you get there, Rob? That sounds like a bit of a stretch. Well, what she's actually talking is about planning the economy and the development of the economy into the future. Oh, okay. I'm not a lunatic. I do know that there is a bit of guidance that the state has to play sometimes. The other thing is that the DA backs the Sustainable Development Goals as the cornerstone of their manifesto as a party. I also know that they were extremely enthusiastic about the Climate Change Act, which strips away all rights of all private producers and traders anywhere. The minister has the power to set targets on any basis for any individual company, any sector, any region, or the whole nation. Does not have to consult, can simply dictate what those are. What is she envisioning? She's envisioning a world where you're free. You're free as an individual. You have no ties. Don't tie yourself to kith and kin, because that gets you corruption. Don't have any loyalty to your family or your friends. It is your relationship to an institution that matters. Only that. Your relationship to institutions matter. Everything else is a luxury. Your nation state ought to dissolve into a tense, unpleasant, and complicated network of ethnic competition that is regulated by a highly ruthless bureaucracy, which sets targets on every aspect of the economy, which you cannot decide. Democracy is not supposed to change things. Democracy is supposed to allow people the illusion of participation. But instead, the targets will be set in New York, in Brussels, in Addis Ababa, wherever. The picture that she's painting, now in the same conversation, she goes on about how she wants to, she picks on she talks about Karl Popper and the Open Society and all that George Soros bollocks. She worked for that organization for 13 years at a high level. She did not disclose any of it in any interview. She did not disclose any of it in her autobiography. She treated it like it never happened. 13 years of her life. She just mentions the philosophy occasionally. She doesn't tell you what she did for the organization. I don't know what she did for the organization. You know what? Who cares? Maybe it was benign. She picked up the ideas. She believes in them. They're the same ideas as Jan Smuts. You know, the idea that, we have to deal with segregation as a stabilization protocol for now, but the end goal is integration because we're all going to be one holistic organism spanning the entire planet, subject to central control, interpenetrating into every level. What was it that UNESCO saw as their as their basic purpose? We will use the instruments of science to create a new world religion. And what do? They have the United Religions Initiative, and they penetrate all the religions. And with assistance of members of the United Nations, as well as non-Catholics, they help design the Vatican II doctrine. South Africa doesn't just have to break because it's a trap. I mean, these people are foolish. They are not going to bend the substance of human nature. This is not... These people think they are Warren Beatty in Network, crying, talking about a holistic system of systems, an interlocking network of corporations in which every human being has his share and all of that kind of thing. It's this great harmonic thing where they live at a level of society where the barriers to doing anything with your life mean nothing. There are no obligations. It's obligations are affronts to you. If you cannot deliver, you only deliver insofar as you feel it's necessary to get yourself ahead. There's only that. And I don't mean Helen Zille. I mean she's her own kettle of fish. She's not playing at that. She's playing at that at the lower end of that level. She's not Rob Hersov. What irritates me about Rob Hersov, and this is where I get to my conclusion, is with Truth Report, you have the situation where he's coming in, he's recruiting the Conservatives just at the time when the ANC, the DA, is trying to curry favor with black voters. They are trying to become this black liberal party that Helen Zille spoke of. And they have cheered on Agri-BEE. They are pushing for social justice. They are talking about, they're copying Claudi Motsoeneng's local content quotas for this, for the media, the streaming services, all these funny little things. Actually, the latter one I don't really have a problem with. It's actually not that bad. But they attack AfriForum and Solidarity, and if you notice, by the way, the new employment equity doctrine is going to affect NGOs, and so if it manages to pass muster, then Solidarity and AfriForum have to dismantle. They can't organize on the basis of ethnicity anymore. Now, who's going to cry for them amongst any of the elites? Is there any faction of the elites that you think would actually cry for these people? The one element, one of the only two elements of South Africa who are capable of organizing against the elite the Afrikaners and the Zulus. And the only reason anyone's able to organize against the elites is because of ethnicity. Ethnic ties give you the strength to stand up and do something about the big buggers who want to screw you over. Right? And I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, you know, capitalism is exploitation, all that. I don't mind it. I don't mind. You can be as rich as Croesus, so long as when you build stuff, you keep us in mind and you don't disrupt and you don't try and make it unpleasant and you don't try and milk us unnecessarily. You just do good business, provide a service, you know? But that's not what these people do. What is South Africa but a series of interlocking cartels? Why has no one challenged the Labour Relations Act? It's absolutely crippling for business in this country. Almost every single person here agrees. Why do the elites not challenge it? Because of one provision, Section 32, extension to non-parties. If you hold between yourselves a majority share, even by an absolute cunt hair, of the sector, and the sector is defined by the minister, so you can gerrymander the stuff as much as he wants, then any deal that you strike with workers, and it's defined by, you know, volume of workers, is binding to non-parties. Why is that important? Because you need a small sector of the market to be competitive with you in order to, you know, for there to be any competition at all. But if you don't like that, you form a cartel. And that cartel will strike higher and higher wages. And those wages can be afforded by large companies. They can bear the brunt. They can weather shocks through financial extension. Small companies can't handle it. They go bust. And this happens across the board, where you're looking at metalworking, steelworking, furniture business, doesn't matter what the hell you're looking at. This happens across the board. And it's not just there. The gatekeeping gets even worse sometimes. Let's say you want to get into shipping. You want to start a stevedores company. So you call up the National Ports Authority. The National Ports Authority will tell you, oh, hey, you have to register. You have to register with the NASASA, the National Association of Stevedores. What does a stevedore do? You ask. Well, they handle break bulk, which is anything that is not a container or a liquid. So you load and unload funny shaped things. But you've got to be registered. You can't just move heavy objects with big, strong guys. Oh no, this is a technical discipline that requires permission of your peers. Interesting. But it's not just sort of a collection of little sort of cartels. It's funnier than that, because you pick up the phone, you call NPA. If you're lucky, you'll get someone who is not experienced enough and doesn't know what's going on enough to tell you to sod off. Instead, there might be a helpful young intern who tells you, as she told me, that, oh, I think the number's around here somewhere. Goes and fishes around for it. Turns out it's an executive from Grindrod who dominates the shipping business and is also on the Durban Chamber of Commerce representing him, who sounded very panicked when I explained to her that I was looking for NASASA. Turns out they just let the companies control it. It can't be that this is the only sector where this kind of thing happens. I mean, everyone's got a problem. If you're a small company trying to make it up and in, you have to sneak up on these buggers through an area that they didn't think to make any inroads with. The amount of trouble that our four banks made in order to allow Capitec in, all the rigging of the rates that happened in order to keep them up. This country runs exclusively on cartels. It's more cartelized than almost any other country. It's more, when people talk about South Africa being unequal, what they never ever describe is that there's a permanent oligarchy that is so dominant politically and economically that they make Russia look like a flat organizational chart. They're like Sweden in comparison. Yeah, nurse is the same if you're asking. Everything is the same. Everything is a racket, and it's the same cluster of families with a couple of newcomers from the Afrikaans national era and a couple of newcomers from the black nationalist era. But the same families that were in charge in 1922 are in charge now. And it's dismal. It's dismal because these people, it's not just like they are, oh, they're in charge of big chunks of the economy. No, you got to understand that Oppenheimer's controlled 80% of the formal economy in the late 80s. You couldn't fart without asking Harry Oppenheimer what the rate was. Right? What are they doing now? They designed the BEE in 2003. 9 years later, they divest from the mining. 12 years after that, they shut Brenthurst down. No, they don't care about South Africa. They wash their hands of it. Africa as a whole, their playground already. They care enough to keep. They want to keep the gates open. They've won now. There's no point. They've settled. They got their feeding trough back. It's sick, really. We're effectively a dictatorship. No one is there any citizen who thinks that they have seen their interests reflected in any legislative process or in the policy process of the DA? Do you want the DA coming around your house like in Hessequa municipality where they're trialing a project that they're going to apply to Cape Town? Do you want your local councils to come and threaten to kill your dogs if you don't pay your dog license? Do you need Johan Rupert forcing you to pay a tax on your own solar panels on your own house? Do you want your rates for your house to increase at twice the inflation rate for the rest of time until you're selling your own arsehole out of the car boot in the Checkers shopping mall, in Checkers parking lot? Is that what you want? Because this is the future that you get with the DA. Jordan Hill Lewis is 100% behind the distributor's picture. He brags about it. I mean, Jack Miller was telling me once, he had a conversation about this, and he said, well, why aren't you trying to challenge the Division of Revenue Act to do this, that, and the other? And he says, but then what about Buffalo City? What happens to them? Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, Buffalo City voted for the ANC, and the ANC is not a trivial organization. The MK is not a trivial organization. The EFF is not a trivial organization. These are movements that discriminate against me on the color of my skin. They rob the future of my children, and they threaten the continued existence of my people in the long term. Hello, sweetie.
Why do you only buy one bottle?
Only one bottle of what?
Tonic.
There's another bottle of tonic in the fridge.
Where?
Our fridge. Any weasel. I mean, it's staggering to me. So here's how I see it. Marikana happens, and this is the next line is question marks. So Marikana happens, and I have to look into this. I'm going to look into this tomorrow morning. Marikana happens, question marks. I know every lefty in the world was taking note of Marikana. It can't just have been them. I mean, Thomas Piketty opens his book with Marikana. Oh. So something happened there because Cyril Ramaphosa, as far as I'm concerned, was behind getting the police to come and open fire on those poor buggers. I know they killed police. I know they're violent little shits, but did half of them have to be executed at point blank range in the bushes? Do you think all of them were really involved with the little killings that happened beforehand? No. Most of them are just miners who are in a tough position. I have sympathy for them. I'm a crusty, black-hearted reactionary, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a rock drill operator and you're sitting with arthritis at 45, I don't know. So that goes down. Ramaphosa's on the spot under the spotlight. They try to go after Jacob Zuma. What does Jacob Zuma do? He knows that it's Ramaphosa's friends who are pushing the buttons. He knows that Ramaphosa was raised up by the Oppenheimers back in the 1980s. He was their butt boy. He knows that Sidney Frankel, who's a white-collar criminal at an international scale, who was raping children like it was going out of fashion, was the prime guy who introduced Rolf Mayer to Cyril Ramaphosa, right? All of that incestuous nonsense, right? Lonman is the mind. Oh, by the way, funny little detail. You know why we were in the Congo? Standard Bank, the Chamber of Mines, sod off up to Katanga province to get deals. The quid pro quo is the South African military is going to help defeat Rwanda in the Kivu provinces. Because the United Nations doesn't have a budget anymore because fucking Trump's telling them to sod off. So, we send troops to go and fight for Tshisekedi, who's frothing at the mouth and threatening to invade Rwanda. Yeah, fucking smart. The best military in the entire continent. Yeah, let's just go and threaten them. Fucking idiot. I don't care if they've broken the law. You got to know your own strength. So instead of going in as a peacekeeping force, we go in as an instrument of a foreign state. So you think, okay, well, that's pretty bananas. What's bananas is including them in SADC in the first place, because SADC is not just a free trade area. It includes a common defense pact. So actually, we kind of had to, in a funny sort of way. But we get a quid pro quo. I mean, you think this is a minor deal? Minor deal. Ha ha ha. No. Standard Bank registered this as its most important investment strategy for the entire continent. Nothing else comes close to this deal. So we killed a whole bunch of, illiterate men in the jungle, had a bunch of our people die, embarrassed ourselves on the national stage, so that these people can make a crust. Yeah, it's nothing. And what do you say? Huh? Want another round? You want to go another round with this shit? Do you think this government, do you think that these people actually have a grip? I don't think they have a grip. I think they've exhausted every card they have to play. What they're worried about now is South Africa breaking apart. Because if South Africa breaks apart, this whole cluster of ideas gets disproven. And they lose their investments. Yeah, it would be great if they ring-fence their investments in the Cape, save them a lot of time and money and fuss and hassle. But there's something that R.W. Johnson said. He was writing in 2008, 2009, whatever it was. Nutty Crust are the best biscuits. No competition. Literally the best biscuit ever made. There's absolutely no competition. He said, all of these Joburg businessmen in the early 90s, they were fleeing the country, but not before they sweated their assets until they were absolutely bust, right? Now, sweating your assets means, let's say you own a factory. You don't put any new investment in. You just keep running it at absolute breaking point. And if things break, you don't replace them. You just kind of let it go down, get it down, go down. And you stress it and you stress it. And when things don't look like they can make a profit anymore, you are cappuccino flavored. Is jy bedonne? No, you go for the original. Do not adulterate. Don't be one of those people. The only time any of those like weird flavored vibes are worth it is when you get the chocolate mint flavored. You know those lemon cream biscuits? They do a choc mint version of that. That's high quality. Everything else, no, stop it. Romany creams are supposed to be chocolate flavored. Do not like the regular original flavor of everything is always the best, with very few exceptions. Very few. Like Play energy drink. The original is the best energy drink that's ever been made. It's the only one that actually tastes good. Every other thing of Play, every other flavor is bollocks. It's worthless. It's no good. Anyway, where the hell was I? I'm living in the coziest part of hell, and I can't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, Katanga, blah blah blah. Again, what's the difference with Zuma? Zuma was enriching himself. He wasn't enriching these guys. What did the NP do? The NP, they knew to cut these boys in. And like I said many, many times, the end of apartheid was decided in 1976 when Henry Kissinger rode into town and told Forster, sorry, the jig is up. You can hang on long enough to keep pressure on Angola so that we don't lose control of the oil market to the Russians. And we can hold on to the Cape of Good Hope because we don't want to lose the oil market to the Russians. But, yeah, you're going to wind up this apartheid business. He decides all of those states are going. And this is at the tail end of a tour that he starts in 1975 where he promotes decolonization across Africa. Henry Kissinger. Everyone thinks of him as like a right-winger. No. Decolonization, number one. Read Francis Stoner Saunders, who paid the piper. The United States has been pushing for decolonization and sort of left liberal progressivism since 1945, since the year dot. The second the global empire was formed, there they were pushing what we now call woke in a more primitive form. That's the name of the game. The American empire is woke. That's what it's about. So, yeah. So Henry Kissinger comes down and he tells us, okay, this is what's going to happen. First thing that Forster does, commissions a report that allows him to justify the liberalization of the labor market and the removal of the color bar. That report is called the Vihan report. Vihan report actually puts together a rather sensible argument that the increased pressure from strikes, strike action, unionization, organized labor, specifically referring to the coal miners' strike in 1973 in KwaZulu-Natal, that this, in combination with increased resistance to cultural integration we see in white South Africa, the imposition of Afrikaans on black students in the non-Bantustan areas in South Africa, this demonstrates a tendency to that arises from rising wages, because you've got to remember, for 15 years now, black wages have been growing, I think, 50% year on year. 50, while white wages have been growing 3%, something like that. So we'd been matching inflation, but black wages just been skyrocketing. So they're getting because we didn't want more black immigration to increase the administrative burden, we were a captive labor market whose value was just rising and rising and rising and rising and rising. Quality was increasing. Inequality was falling. If you look at the Gini coefficient for apartheid South Africa, it's just like this, right? And then Forster starts removing the color bar. So let's not stand in the way of progress. This is a guy who was an actual dyed-in-the-wool Nazi in his youth. And here he is, dismantling the color bar, imposing sanctions on neighboring Rhodesia. 2 years later, Rhodesia collapses because how are you going to function? So they reach out to this guy called Arend Leipert. Arend Leipert wrote this big paper in 1975. So he says, consociationalism is great for South Africa. It's a system where every ethnic group votes in their own representatives. It's an imaginary system that he invented, right? And each ethnic group gets a little veto, right? You make sure that no one dominates anyone else. And then he says, we work fantastically in South Africa because there's no majority. Now, you'll see here that line from, Corne Mulder. It's a bullshit line, right? There's definitely a majority. People knew that black Africans were forming racial consciousness in the 70s already. The black consciousness movement is a dead giveaway. By the way, founded in the Anglican Church by white guys who are... Remember, the Anglican Church is controlled by the British government, like not just conspiratorially, but also legislatively and like literally legally. It's controlled by the British government. So they start the black consciousness movement in South Africa. And the US Information Agency and the CIA start reaching into Soweto in 1975. So the Anglo-American establishment has contact with the black consciousness movement. And yeah, then we have the Soweto uprising. And then we have Kissinger. And then we have a major resurgence in the IFP, who again, Anglicans, British ties, right? And the Soviet Union looks at this and goes, oh, they're reforming now. Great. Let's get a move on. Let's put pressure. So they fund the ANC People's War, kill the IFP, kill the BCP, torture, murder, kill, bomb, burn, the whole 9 yards, right? I mean, it's all over by then, isn't it? The decision has been made in 1976. No one's told. All happens behind closed doors in a very relaxed atmosphere. Where were we involved? So we get this sort of third dispensation where things stood in limbo. Now the idea is, what is the fourth dispensation? Is it going to be a DA-led neoliberal global bullshit machine with like some Trumpist flavor in the media so that people feel like they can be based in the midst of all of this shit? End up like South America, just an endless long slog towards enshittification, but without the attenuating birthright. Here's the thing. I will say this again. If we do not break out South Africa, we are screwed. Because these people who are in charge of South Africa really, really think that they are going to get the DA in charge and they are going to make the economy right before 2035. I don't think so. I think what Truth Report is for is so that nobody thinks about secession, so that nobody thinks about enclave separatism, so that everyone keeps looking at, oh my God, daily drama, ANC bad. And what are your solutions? Well, your solutions are the DA. I understand maybe it's there to control the DA to be a little bit more strong in the arm with the ANC. And yes, they have been learning since Helen Zille got rid of Ryan Coetzee, who I think is a massive prick. But what did they want to do in the budget crisis? They told us that 2% VAT, that was a victory. Sure, why not? But what did they actually put on the table as an alternative? Did they just say no? Fuck the VAT increase. No more increases. No more increased spending. No. They wanted increased spending. They want the welfare. They wanted to tax your in exchange for not having VAT. It was a nice big headline item. Instead, they wanted to tax your medical aid and petrol. Hey, you two dogs, shush. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that, but my dogs have been sort of wrestling under the table. I don't think the DA are serious, right? Interesting. I haven't read the DA's farm murder report. I'm going to do that. But I think, in a funny sort of way, we might be looking at best case scenario for us actually being Mashatile comes to power, puts the MK into the driving seat, and no, I mean, look at what the DA is trying to do with the Expropriation Act. They're trying to sell it to us as something that's just there to. I mean, Helen Zille can almost like barely make herself like pretend that she gives a shit about it. Meanwhile, she says as well, it's actually what did she say? It was like just imminent domain. Nobody talks about the land court bill because what they're realizing is they actually can't control Ramaphosa. They know they need him and they've got no other alternatives. So he can actually kind of push for his pet ideas finally. That's why all of this is going through. They can't control him really. They're trying their hardest. I think they're actually starting to try now. But they can't stop him. And they cannot stop him from being destroyed because they are going to get rid of him. Not because they have anyone to replace him, but because they want to stop the shit. But they can't. And when this is all over, he's going to be replaced. Someone's going to think, oh yeah, let's get Motsepe in. But this trick has been pulled before, and you can't fool people 3 times in a row. The fact that they figured this out with Jacob Zuma, you think they won't see this coming? You try and push Motsepe on them. The president's brother-in-law, richest man in the country. Oh no, he's not corrupt. He's not white monopoly capital adjacent. You're not going to be able to sell that. We are going to, I think we might very well get an ANC reunion party, and it's going to make a lot of people howl in agony. The worst part is we will only realize afterwards that we should have done something beforehand. What is Rob Hersov and his crew making us do now? Nothing. That is what he's making us do. Nothing. For looking at this problem in the face and discussing it in the group that he invited me onto, I was kicked. So black people are not going to vote DA. He tried to get them to vote for a liberal party with ZB and Mashaba and my money. Not going to happen. People can see they're fake. People can see their crooked little shits. What you need is to not listen to to Hersov. He is not your friend. You know, thing is, I have some respect for Helen Zille. As perverse as it sounds, I know, considering she's ranged against everything that I think is sensible and productive. I have respect for her still. She's very competent, and she actually believes in something, you know? I don't know that Rob Hersov believes in anything. You know, what's he doing? He wants to save South Africa? How? What's his plan? I mean, the plan beforehand actually kind of made sense. But now that we've got Ramaphosa and we can see what he's made of and what he's going to do, even with the DA in coalition, how can you pretend you have a plan now? You know, make sure that people don't turn to the AfriForums and the Solidarities. Make sure that they don't turn to the Cape Independence Movement. You got to give them a right-wing outlet so that they feel like, oh yeah, there's someone based around here who's telling you like it is. Are you telling me that you can't tell that the ANC are bad without Rob Hersov? You need Rob Hersov to tell you that the ANC are bad? Ooh. Wow. Wow. Otwerk is stupid. Otwerk is brain damage. You know. No. Truth Report is fine. It's great entertainment. It's good for the news. I like Colonel Chris Wyatt. Okay? They're good sources of ordinary news. But you have to remember what the editorial byline is. And that editorial byline is, do not give up on South Africa. Do not give up on doing things as they've been done the whole time. Right? Everything was a great idea from the year dot. Nothing is wrong. Everything is fine. Right? And that may sound like they're not saying everything's fine. They're saying everything's fucked up. Yes. But they're saying don't look at any actual solutions. Don't change what we're doing in any way. Keep going exactly as we have been doing, complaining in exactly the way we've been complaining since 1995. Do not change a bloody thing. The complaints must remain the same. The solutions must remain the same. Because if we change those solutions and we start thinking, well, what if we partitioned the country? What if we devolved control? What if we did a tax revolt? Well, now, that's dangerous talk, gentlemen. You know, they can't even address it. You know? Now, I was thinking about a tax revolt as well. Actually, a tax revolt is one thing that these people do talk about because they know no one can try it. It's way too dangerous. Right? The thing is, nowadays, no one remembers the good old days. So, or the bad old days, however you care to put it. No one remembers the old days. So, you know, the bulk of the population are under 50. You know, no one really knows how things worked back then, even if they lived through a bit of it. So, most of the population who are watching Truth Report are going, yeah. And they just go back to eating their biscuits. Yeah? And I'm getting tired of doing what I'm doing. Like, okay, I'm not going to lie. The roadmap to Western Cape autonomy, don't assume that you're going to get any massive, like, blinder bombshells there. The House of New Dr. Oh, that's a depressing remark. Yeah. Yeah, Danny says thanks for posting a roadmap to Western Cape autonomy. Oh, you've never heard of the Truth Report? No, you're fine. I mean, you'll probably, if you're on YouTube a lot, you'll probably recognize some of the faces that have been recruited. They're good guys. I like them. Colonel Chris Wyatt, smart guy. I get the feeling he doesn't quite like my vibe. But then again, he's, welcome to it. Joe Emilio, really, really lovely guy, doing great work. Love him. Donald Brown, odd character, hard worker, funny character. I don't know how to talk to him. I don't know why. Like, there's nothing wrong with him. He seems like a great guy. I just, like, he's never done anything like I put my finger. It's just like I can't click with him. But no, he says a lot of sensible shit sometimes, but he doesn't tend to actually air his opinions when he's on YouTube. I share his sentiment on skepticism of the Cape Independence movement, in the sense that it's a great idea, but people are not moving fast enough. I agree with him on that. I really do. I pressed a button today, sort of, which might actually do something in the real world. We'll find out in a month or two. But yeah, Ronaldo Jose, don't knock him too much. I mean, I used to make fun of him, which was kind of unnecessary. But he's actually a really nice guy, and I don't know. It just seems to me like all of these guys, like, they really want to help out and make a platform that combines forces and does something good, and makes a bit of money. No, I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with Ronaldo. He's a great guy. The thing about all these guys, and especially actually Colonel Wyatt is probably the best of this, but everyone on that list, like, they're good at keeping track of the news, right? And that's fine. They're good sources of news. One person to plug in, read the news, the headlines, tell you something about them, and you don't have to wade through a lot of horrible wank written by people who hate you and hate your guts, So I like that. I mean, I have my own people that I listen to. So, Mork Rocks. Why do I know that? Do I know him from that person from Twitter? The Mork Rock Show. Maybe I should have a poke around. But yeah, what I'm saying here is, then that platform is not going to be a place where you're going to find radical solutions. Aaron's Ritz is the only person out there who's actually calling for radical solutions. He is the only person, right? Now, he's cautious because he has to be, because we all have to be, right? But he's the only person who's calling out for radical solutions. The AfriForum and Solidarity do amazing work, but they are a holding pattern. They do not have political, structural solutions. What they have is maintenance and conservation, right? And you think, oh, it's wonderful, they built universities and stuff. But think of it this way, right? What you're doing is you're retreating. Instead of being this prestige organization which allows you to project your culture, your research, and everything, right? Like Stellenbosch, for example, right? Now you retreat into academia, right? Which is great, very expensive, hard to get into. Of course, produce quality education, nothing wrong with that. Really impressive that they built it. Met some of the guys, heard how they put that thing together. fucking marveling at it. Not gonna lie, but yeah. The problem here is that even the progress they're making is a retreat, and we have to understand that that's the case. To advance as a people, whether you're doing it as the Afrikaners or as the Cape or as the Zulu or whatever you're doing, you have to be moving something forward and taking power and securing territory. And if you're not doing that, and capital, territory, capital, narrative, influence, things where you can see like a serious step forward, where you're gaining, that is not happening. At the moment, it's still in managed decline mode. Adam Stritz is the one who's turning the ship slowly but surely. But it's hard. It's hard. And I'm hoping that if I can get in touch with colored leaders who are not Gate and McKenzie, we can maybe straighten something out. Because the second that colored nationalists realize that Cape independence is something that's actually existential, the second they realize it's existential, they're going to start playing capture the flag, and that flag is Cape independence, right? So if you've got the white O's and the brown O's going, Cape independence is ours both, and they realize that it's not about waiting for permission to seat at the table, it's bringing your own chair. The second they realize that, it's going to be a flipping bun fight, and I am here for it. What's wrong with Colonel Wyatt? Look, Colonel Wyatt is, I've never seen him say anything that looks like containment to me. He seems to just genuinely care. He may well be an American sort of intel or state adjacent guy. He may not. I don't really care. He's never done anything that's really rubbed me the wrong way. And I think being an organized military man, he looks at my sort of irregular attendance to internet content production and realizes that I'm actually, and my disorganized way of thinking, and he goes, yeah, that guy's just hasn't got his act together. And he's absolutely right. I live life like a grad student buried in my office doing research all hours of the day, writing articles in between, carrying children as well and looking after the house and blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes I get to leave the house to do a bit of field research once every blue moon. I have a tiny modicum of a social life. I mean, I've got good friends that I talk to, but like some of them, they live uncomfortably far from me at the moment, which is unpleasant. Yes, my boy. Hello, my boy. Oh, you too? Are you also feeling that way? Yeah, okay. Oh, no, yes, I love you too. Yeah. Yeah, fuck the refugee thing. The refugee thing is bollocks. Zyra. Hey, go. Okay. My dogs are clamoring for a feed. I'm going to have to leave you guys. But I just want to say the last thing. Yeah, the refugee thing is terrible. It's going to destroy, if it ever becomes effective, it's going to destroy what remains of our community. And then nothing will be possible. Everything will be suffering. So, screw Trump, actually. Screw that guy. I don't like him because he's turned his back on a lot of things that he's promised. I don't like him anymore. Do not care for him. Anyway, should be enough for me.